What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. This is going to be the beginning of a discography with one of my favourite metal bands of all time, and I'm going to dive into all the albums from the legendary, very beloved and important new metal band that is Korn. So I'm going to dive into the beginning of the band's discography and review the self-titled debut album. So recently, the album, actually as I'm recording this video, the album celebrates its 27th anniversary. It came out October 11th, 1994. The band had recorded this album from May to June the same year, recorded at Indigo Ranch Studios, which was in Malibu, California. And this is the first album to be including Ross Robinson for the production for the album. And the band was signed to Immortal/Epic by a guy named Paul Pontius, as he actually did spot the band while performing live with one of the gigs in the summer of '93. And then Paul had given Korn the offer to be signed to Immortal/Epic. So this album is always one of the most relevant and beloved albums in modern metal, and this has been always regarded by many Korn fans as the band's best work. And when it came out, it had been praised upon its reception, and all these times of the album's attention, it was praised as one of the greatest metal albums of all time, and for many to regard this album as the definitive album in the new metal genre. This album goes for more than 60 minutes in its entirety. The album's cover art shows a young girl, and its shadow, you could see that the shadow of the girl was like being hanged with the Korn logo on top of her, and there's another shadow of a guy who many people said that he's either holding horseshoes or maybe blades. And the album's photography was created by Steven Stickler, who will later on be included for the photography on the next album of Life is Peachy. This album is always one of my favourites of all time, and it was, to me, one of those metal debuts that I was incredibly obsessed with. The Korn discography started with a mixtape called Nedemeyer's Mind, and 4 of the tracks were from that cassette tape that would later on be re-recorded for the album: Predictable, Daddy, Blind, and Alive, which was then taken to a different title of one of the tracks that I will get to later on. The first song on the album, Blind, is an absolute classic, and there's no other Korn fan that would miss this one out. It became the band's best beloved track for many people, the very gentle cymbal hits, and once you hear that, you know it's Korn, and you hear these really frenetic, unnerving sounds on the guitars. Apparently, Monkey and Head were inspired by the sound of Mr. Bungle's self-titled debut album, and that's where they got the inspiration from, because they are big fans of that band. So you hear the anticipated guitar riffs, and the adrenaline of the very catchy riff boosts in with the whole sound of the band. This is really one of the most memorable classic songs from the entire sound of the band. These vocal performances with Davis's lead vocals and Head's backing vocals to make it really weary, and with such a memorable hook to it. This was always one of the staples for Korn, and after this album's release, they always performed this one live without any other gig that would not include this track. Masterpiece of an opening track. Ball Tongue is another really, really strong song, very strong groove into this track, especially after the frenetic build-up on the introduction. Such a brilliant hook to it as well, like Blind, with these howling, noisy, whiny guitar notes in the verse sections, and you feel these thick bass tone all the way through these verse sections, puts in a different vibe. And onto the chorus, you hear Heads yells and shouts while Davis goes frenetic all the way through on this track. I always really do love Ball Tongue, and for me, one of the other underrated classics for Korn. Need To being another song that I really do love very much, and this is the song that was previously titled as Alive from the Niedermeyer's Mind, and lyrically onto this track deals about a difficult relationship of someone you love very much, but then you get very paranoid that they would stop loving you. I really think that this is one of the other really moody performances for Davis as a vocalist, as well as Blind and Need To. But I think Need To puts in so much of its dark nature that's all surrounded in its entirety of the track. There we hear the infamous single of Clown, which the inspiration behind this song depicts, according to Jonathan Davis, that there was a skinhead that was really abusive to him, saying, "Go back to Bakersfield," and then the band's manager decides to beat the shit out of him. Although with the deeper content of the lyrics, Clown explores went through a lot of abuse while Jonathan was in school, and especially with some of the lyrics like "Hit me clown because I'm not from your town." But then, as the brutality of the song really gets, Clown is just such a brutal number. Really depicts itself onto how destructive yet disturbing it really gets. Good aesthetic sounds of the sound of the band. It's just a catchy yet an intense vibe of a song, with another song that deals on that exact vein of a song called Faggot. Faggot is another song where it just goes in all out ballistic, and lyrics wise, Davis was really picked on for wearing eyeliner, and he was going through the phase of loving some new wave kind of music, and examples being Duran Duran, who are a band that Davis admired. But with the music, this does have the return into that Mr. Bungle chord, like with Blind in a way, but this is one of the very unsettling songs, the verse sections, and you hear some of David Silvera's very best drumming, such a rhythmic, versatile sound of his playing, but the darkness of the bridge section, you hear these low guitar notes, and then you hear Davis going from whispering, then he gets louder and louder and louder, and then he just goes into some emotional breakdown as the rest of the band, from James, Monkey, Fieldy, and David, just go balls to the wall, action, non-stop. Always one of my favourite Korn tracks of all time. Now here's some bit of trivia. The track Divine, one of the shortest, if not the shortest, track on the album, there's a bass player that we later on get to know and love named Robert Trujillo from Metallica. He was involving some of the Korn members to write this track, but as a song, Divine has like a really good yet brilliant stop-start staccato kind of vein for its musicality, and really think that Divine is underappreciated to follow up Clown. And same goes with other gems of the album, including Fake. And Fake has been one of the other highlights. It paints some really dark imagery, and I think that some of these basic but yet eerie guitar notes on a song like this, similar to Ball Tongue, delivers into a lot of these brutal parts of what the sound of Korn are all about. Fake is one of the other ones that has some stomping parts of its playing style, and yet alone, this is one of my other favorites of the record, Chutes and Ladders being another promotional single. Now, the beginning of Chutes and Ladders, some people would say that it's Jonathan playing the bagpipes over on the mountain, but it was actually Jonathan recording while he was away into the room where he was recording his vocals. So he was playing his bagpipes, and you hear that faint sound in the background. But as the sound of the bagpipes get louder, Jonathan was entering in the studio while playing the bagpipes. Then the build-up with the sound of the band is like that they are commanding with each other, marching along the way. But as the darkness of this song really builds, lots of the lyrics are just basically nursery rhymes, according to Jonathan Davis. And Davis did say that the nursery rhymes have a disturbing, unsettling vibe to it. And I think that this is the type of song that paints that morbid picture along the lines. And I do also admire the change of pace on the bridge section as these nursery rhymes were going around. Ring a ring of roses to One to Buckle My Shoe. And then with the other nursery rhymes of Mary Had a Little Lamb to Baa Baa Black Sheep, etc. This one is one of the best examples where you could hear some vivid imagery surrounding into the lyrics. And I think while they are nursery rhymes, I think that it really is an intensifying experience to really think that you thought they were happy nursery rhymes, but then they just were changed with its imagination. But then you hear the final track on the album of Daddy. Now this was taken from a previous title called Follow Me, and this track along with Blind were actually written from a previous band that Jonathan Davis was a part of called Sex Art, and also a previous member from Sex Art was also responsible for the track, who was the member of Dennis Shin. Although lyrically, Jonathan Davis throughout childhood, he went through a lot. Jonathan explained the origin of the track, that he was being abused, and it was actually the babysitter, that he was sexually molested and raped, not the parents. And that's what a lot of people had been miscorrected from the track's title, because a lot of people said that it was about his parents or his father, but Davis obviously denies that. And yet alone that Jonathan, when he was a child, explained it to his parents, did not believe him. This is, out of the question, the most bravest and I would say the most disturbing metal song that I've ever heard. You can really hear the sense of dread, emotional cries, and abused, tortured soul of Jonathan's vocals during the recording of this song. And the music to this really paints it very, very well. And it's just a song basically going through Davis's trauma. And then after the main part of the song, you can actually hear Davis's crying as he was going very, very violent towards his babysitter. That for many people, this was just too upsetting of a song that they can't listen to it. And I can understand why. And I know I'm going on about this, but if you are a person that went through this same thing like Davis went through, I am here for you, because you are a beautiful human being who deserves the best love, and I am very, very sorry that you went through some disgusting sexual abuse or brutality like that. A woman in the background with reverb singing a lullaby, and it was a woman named Judith Kainer. I really love the rest of the band's musicianship into this track. There's no other Korn song like this after that, until the song Kill You from the Life is Peachy album, which I will obviously get to after this album. For the entirety of the band, the musicianship with these distorted, crunchy riffs from Monkey and Head, the legendary guitarists have built in some of the best, grooviest, and heavy songs that Korn had ever put out. Fieldy's bass work throughout this album was very versatile and rhythmic, a wonderful bass player, and David Silveira on his drums always was my favorite drummer from Korn, and I know that Ray adds in his own flavors later on, much later on, but David Silveira, he adds so much variety, some funky beats to a lot of driving deliveries with his own ideas of making a drum beat, and his drumming on this album makes it one of his very, very best, and much love and respect for Jonathan Davis into his own emotional, mentally unstable vocal performances all the way through this album. And this album would later on become one of the masterpieces of modern metal, and later on Ross Robinson would later produce albums from Slipknot's first two albums and involve others including Limp Bizkit to Sepultura, and his production on this album was incredible. It adds a very big dynamic sound. It's like a raw type of production that I really do admire so much. And this is one of the best parts about the sound of Korn, because of Ross Robinson's production on some of their albums after this. And I know that he went through different bands along the ways as a producer, but this is one of the best ones that Ross Robinson had ever worked on. A lot of the lyrics, from drug abuse to child abuse, bullying, all the way through these lyrics, to have music from the band here all at once. To me, this is a masterpiece of a perfect modern metal product. And with that being said, I'm going to give this album a 10 out of 10. Hence, as I've mentioned earlier, that this is one of my favourite debut albums of all time in metal. And I'm very curious to know what you personally think of this album in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.